Hey everybody, this is Jay from Sub 70. Just wanted to give a quick introduction to this episode of our podcast. We were lucky enough to have Retief Goosen join us. Jason spoke with Retief regarding his two U.S. Open wins, traveling throughout his career and playing golf all around the world, his current status where he is playing both on the PGA Tour and slowly transitioning over to some Champions Tour events. Also discussed his World Golf Hall of Fame induction, which is taking place this year. So hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Please check out our website and the rest of our episodes at golfsub70.com. Here is the interview.
I know you're playing this week on the PGA Tour. Wondering how your game is feeling and wondering how you still relish the competition on the PGA Tour. And does it still get your juices flowing to go out there and play against that younger generation and see how your game stacks up?
Yes, definitely. I'm very excited playing this week. Playing with the youngsters. I actually played 9 holes yesterday with Charles Schwartzel, whose swing is looking really good at the moment. I think if he's going to get his putter going, he'll do well. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm playing a golf course that I've liked. I finished second here a couple of years ago, and yeah, I think the practice I got out of my swing in the last couple of weeks, playing on a Champions Tour, hopefully will carry forward this week. I felt like last week I was starting to swing the club better and putting a little better. So I'm excited to get out here tomorrow and give it a go.
Looking at your 2019 schedule, what percentage do you think will be playing on the Champions Tour, and how many PGA Tour events would you still like to be able to fit into that?
I would like to play quite a few still on the PGA Tour, but you know, I've been out there on the regular tours and since now 28 plus years. So it was actually quite nice to the last couple of weeks to see faces that I've not seen for a while, that I played with a number of years ago, guys that are just a little older than me. So it was good fun to catch up with some of the guys. So at the moment, I think I'm probably going to play about 70-80% of my events on the Champions Tour, and try and fit in a few PGA Tour events in between. But I think it's time for me to move off into another chapter in my career and give it a good go on the Champions Tour.
I was looking at your Champions Tour starts. You've been on, started twice this year with a T6 last week, so you're getting into the mix of, getting closer to that first victory out there. So you're playing well, but my question too is, what has surprised you the most on the competition or being out in the Champions Tour so far, that maybe something you didn't think about that has kind of surprised you a little bit from competing and being out there?
Well, I knew it was going to be tough. I mean, you look at the scoring, the guys make, you 17, 16, 18 under for 3 rounds of golf. It doesn't matter what golf course you play. You got to play well to shoot that scoring. And, from my experience playing around the world, wherever I won around the world, I know those events I've won. I played great golf beating those players. The fields might not have been that deep, but you had to play some of your best golf to win. And I expect that to be the same on the Champions. Bernard Langer is obviously playing amazing still. And last week, I had a chance. I had to birdie the last hole to get in a playoff and ended up making bogey, which was very disappointing. But I'm looking forward to the rest of the season and giving myself chances to win.
Is it a little bit different of a mindset with, without a cut? Does it feel like you got to put the pedal down faster out there just straight out of the gate versus kind of letting the rounds come to you a little bit, knowing how low those scores are over 3 rounds? Is there a little bit of a different thought process kind of going into those weeks versus regular tour events?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you need to birdie from the first hole start. I think in a regular tour event, you sort of trying to make sure there's no real big mistakes that completely puts you out in the first couple of rounds and you miss the cut. So from the very first hole onwards on a Champions, you need to fire birdies, which also can add pressure to you because you sort of know you have to make birdies, and it can get frustrating that everybody around you is shooting 7 under and you hovering around even par. Sometimes it is frustrating.
I know you have some new equipment in the bag this year from Callaway. Question is, what clubs, what changes have you made for 2019? And then how do you go about that process for you to actually put a club into play? And is there something us amateurs could kind of learn from that process of how you go about selecting your equipment and then making that final decision, like I'm going to game this and we're going to put in play because I think it fits me the best? And how do you go about that, essentially?
Yes, I was excited moving to Callaway this year. I know it's a great brand, and their golf balls are very good. So I think at the end I made the right decision going with them. I like the look and the feel of the clubs. Callaway I putted with a Callaway putter for many years anyway, so putting was not an issue for me. It was just finding I'm comfortable with, and I've used these first couple of events playing one tournament with one set of irons and another tournament with another set of irons, and I think I've now settled into irons that I'm comfortable with and I like the look and the feel of. So the decision was hard, but I'm very happy now. I'm very, very happy with the golf ball too, the Callaway golf ball. It has a very much everything I need in the ball. You got speed off the driver, and yet I got spin and feel with the irons. So I'm very excited about that.
Is one over the other more difficult to get comfortable with, the ball or the clubs? Is at your level, is one more challenging to get exactly right for you?
I think for us, it's the ball is quite important. Iron is an iron, depends if you play a blade. A blade's a blade. They all pretty much have similar feel and performance, unless you go to some of the irons that has a little hotter face. So I think you need for your swing speed and to get the right spin rate, the ball is important. Knowing that you're going to stand over a shot and how the ball's going to react is definitely a plus.
Let's talk about the Hall of Fame. What an honor. You'll be inducted this year. I'm assuming it has to mean a ton to your career and recognition of what you've accomplished with some really great golf around the world. And also, I'm assuming, has to be reflective of the people who helped you get to the success that you've had. So it has to be for your family and friends, everybody, one heck of an honor of a lifetime.
Oh yes, no, definitely. I was up against tough competition to get the nod, and I'm very proud, and that the selection committees and so on has found what I've done for golf around the world has got me in. Yes, there's been a lot of people helping me getting there. Your sponsors, family, the sacrifice from not being at home and being on the road for weeks in and weeks out. When I was in my prime, I played 35, 37 tournaments a year. So I was away a lot. It's all paying off now. And I'm very proud and honored to be inducted in June and be with all the greats and legends and people that has done such a good thing for the game of golf.
Also in your career, you've always been known as a world player. You've won on every major tour. And two-part question: do you think playing around the world made you total and complete player, that you may have not accomplished what you accomplished without that experience. And do you think it's short-sighted a little bit for the younger players who just maybe want to go, especially here in the States, where they just want to go from college to the web to the PGA Tour without that experience of playing all over? Do you think they're maybe potentially missing something by not going that route?
Yes. I mean, golf obviously is a global game. For me, Ernie, Gary Player, we played around the world. We found that winning around the world has made us stronger, and it's grown the game of golf around the world. What we've tried, that was one of our goals, to try and grow the game around the world, and also build a brand for yourself around the world, so people recognize you wherever you are. It would be good, I think, if some of the guys go out and play a little bit around the world. There's a number of Americans now doing that, playing a little bit in the Middle East and so on, which is good to see, and it's great for the game to get these top players to go around the world and build the game.
I've had other South African, players on the podcast, and Mr. Player's name always comes up. So, what sort of influence, besides playing golf around the world, did he have on you? And what's maybe a couple of his best attributes that you just simply admire on a human level about Mr. Player?
Well, Gary is an amazing man, and he, the thing I admire about Gary Player is just his outlook in life. That guy could not have won as many tournaments as he has with total commitment and being very positive. I mean, Gary is one of the most positive persons I know. He never has anything bad to say. He only just talks good stuff the whole time, and that's what keeps him so young. And I think and exercise. He's been a great role model for a lot of players for a long time. Work, put in the effort, and it pays off.
Yeah, he was really ahead of that curve when it came to getting your body in shape for golf. By about 50 years or so, it's pretty crazy of the trend. Looking back, he was one of the first guys to do it, and obviously it paid off for his career. So, trendsetter in more than one way, to say the least. Major championships. You have two of them. The U.S. Opens. First one at 2001 at Southern Hills, iconic club. You win in a playoff, in a major, to win your first major championship. Looking back, what's sort of the memories of that week? And to get that first one, it has to be one heck of a feeling that you're, a part of history forever. You're sort of in that club at that point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I played in Europe, obviously, for a number of years before that 0-1 victory. And the week before, I played the English Open, and I actually was hitting the ball really good, but just wasn't making the putts. And I came over here and had a practice round with Nick Price around Southern Hills, and he won around that course. So it was great to play with him and see how he handled the course and what clubs he was hitting. And I really, from round one, I was comfortable with the golf course, and I started making putts. And and the end, obviously, the 72nd hole was a little bit of a nightmare, but I managed to come back the following day in the playoff to win it.
How do you find that resiliency to come back from what happened on the last hole, and then come back and keep it together and take it one, I'm assuming one shot at a time, and to stay focused enough to get through that gauntlet? It had to, A, be an interesting experience and to go through, and B, boy, you had to have some confidence coming through something like that to get it done in the end.
Yes, at that time, I was working with a sports psychologist, Josh van Stiphout, for probably 2 to almost 3 years at that time. So I knew the mental side of the game, how important it is. I I felt pretty comfortable coming back that following day. I knew I had just one guy to beat. I knew the mistake I made on the 72nd hole was just purely a lack of experience, and I lost my focusing for a little bit there and made the mistake. So the following day I played well. I putted well again. I felt confident, funny enough, that I was going to pull it off, and it turned out to be my victory. But I've learned a lot from that. How important it is to stay focused, till the last putt goes in, and that's definitely helped my career from day on to really move to another level.
Then in 2004 at Shinnecock, that performance on Sunday, obviously you must have saw how difficult that golf course was playing from the guys out early. You go out that day and beat the field average by 9 shots, 24 putts on greens that were, for most people, virtually unputtable. My question is, how do you, once again, it's kind of like what us amateurs can learn. How do you take those conditions and then perform the way you performed under that pressure to win a major, and not let the moment get too big? So in other words, how did you deal with that final round to perform the way you performed and get your second major title?
That was a tough round, not just a golf course, but mentally wise, and playing against really Phil Mickelson with a New York crowd was very difficult. And that's where I think the mental side of the game that I've worked on has really helped me to block out what was going on the outside of the ropes, people saying things that trying to intimidate you, trying to get you to make mistakes. My caddy was saying to me, "Oh, did you hear what that guy just said?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And I was in such a zone that a lot of that stuff didn't influence me. So I was very proud of me hanging in there and blocking all of that out to pull off that victory.
Do you have a difficult time when the guys were complaining about the conditions in 2018 for what you guys went through in 2004? I didn't know if you kind of found that ironic versus the conditions you guys had to play it, that weekend, and especially on that course, and when you won it had to be, I'm assuming, look more difficult in 04 than what the guys had for this year.
Well, yeah, it was disappointing not to be there. I tried to pre-qualify and missed by a couple of shots, but it was funny. They said they weren't going to make that the greens get out of hand like that again, and they managed to do it again. But there's something about a U.S. Open, it's to the limit. Every hole is pushed to the limit, and it's sometimes difficult to get it perfect on every hole. And we saw in 04 when I won that a couple of greens got unputtable, and the same happened again in 18. So yeah, it's just the way a US Open is. You don't actually expect anything to be fair.
Yeah, and everyone's playing the same golf course, right? So, I think you could probably take it one of two ways. You take the challenge, or you could have a negative thought of saying it's impossible. And it seems like the guys who embrace the challenge of it have gotten through that gauntlet, at least from a fan's perspective. That's sort of the perspective I see.
Yeah, I've always seemed to have won either in tough conditions or more on tougher golf courses, because in the back of your mind you sort of know, maybe half of the field's given up already before the tournament start, and the guys that can grind it out at par is a good score. That's maybe sort of the golf courses I like.
You also had one heck of a good run at the Masters in a 6-year stretch. In a 6-year stretch, your worst finish was a tie for 13th. So thoughts on the tournament? Why did you play that golf course so well? And if you could have gotten a third major title from the regular PGA Tour. Is that the one that you feel you were closest to getting? I know you also played well in the Open Championship, so sort of your thoughts on your run at the Masters.
Yeah, the Masters, it's a special place when you drive through those gates. And I finished second there a couple of times. And I've had my up there probably to win and just couldn't do it, and made a few mistakes in the final round, and that cost you. And it was the same at the British Open. I would have loved to win the British Open and had many top 10 finishes, but just was never able to really have a chance coming down the last. Just one round kept me away. You need 4 good rounds to pull it off. Obviously, 05 US Open at Pinehurst was very disappointing, leading going in the last round, and then completely lost it. And then my good friend Michael Campbell came through from behind to win it. But I would have loved to have had a green jacket, that's for sure. I don't think there's a player that would not love to have that green jacket.
Did the golf course fit your eye? Were you fairly comfortable quickly when you got to Augusta?
Well, yeah, Augusta, it obviously changed a lot over the years from when I played it the first time till the last time. How many yards they've lengthened it by and how many more trees was planted. I think Augusta, I loved it because of the greens. I loved those really fast, slippery, big breaking greens. I seem to putt well on that difficult conditioned greens, and that's probably why I've done so well. They was putting well on that tough greens.
Well, there's another hot topic that was all over Twitter this week was slow play on the PGA Tour. So I have a question. Do you think it's a problem? And if you do think it's a problem, is there anything that can be done within reason to actually speed up the pace so it's not a 6-hour round for 18 holes for professionals?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. The players know who the slow players are out there, and some guys just struggle to pull the trigger when to hit the ball, and they can't hit it till they're 100% perfect. It's sometimes difficult to play fast depending on conditions. And Riviera this last week, it was windy and cold. The course was playing along draining. All that stuff really slows down play anyway. But I honestly don't understand why the PGA Tour won't allow distance measuring devices on the golf course for the players. I know I can speed up my round by at least 15 minutes if I could just walk up the ball, shoot the flag, and go. A lot of these modern golf courses don't actually even have sprinklers on the fairways anymore. A lot of them off in the side in a rough. So you have to sort of wander around trying to find a sprinkler, pace it off, write it down. That really takes time. I know it's the caddy's job too, but he still has to do it. I know that all the yardage books are done with distance measuring devices anyway, so it's pretty much accurate yardage you get. It's just a question of getting it quicker that will speed up play. So I know that will happen one day, that they will allow it, because they'll notice that it will definitely speed up play.
Makes sense to me. The other one that came out this week, I don't know if you're a traditionalist on this or you're for it, but the guys can now wear shorts for practice rounds, which is going to be, if you go out to a practice round, it's going to be weird to see professionals in shorts. So curious on your thoughts on that one.
Well, yes. At least we don't have to play with jacket and ties on anymore like it was in the olden days. But, I can see that the guys would like that, especially come we start playing in the middle of the year when you got these high temperatures, and it definitely keeps you a little more hydrated in the practice rounds before you kick off on the Thursday. On the European Tour, it's been sort of a rule for for a number of years now, that practice rounds, and I think it's great. I think it's something different. I mean, most amateurs, when they go and play, they play in shorts, and I think they find it quite interesting to see us play in shorts, and maybe they feel like they can learn something to see how your legs move, how you really address the ball. But yeah, I think it's a good idea, and I think it just takes the game just to another look.
I also know you have a love for fine wines. You have your own vineyard in South Africa, and I'm not a wine expert by any sense of imagination. So if I was going to get a recommendation from you on a really good bottle of Goosen wine, what would be a good starting or entry point? And is there a certain style or vintage of wine that you've produced that you absolutely love?
Yeah, I've had this boutique winery now for 15 years in South Africa. I do like drinking wine. I don't drink spirits or beer, so I really enjoy a glass of wine with my meal. And how I really got into it was, playing around the world. Whenever you play around the world, you're in different countries, and you pretty much eat in a different restaurant every night. And that's how I got into it, by having a different wine from that region, or wines you've never heard from, having a glass of that with your meal. That's where my interest started. I do like Argentinian wines and Chilean wines. Those are probably some of my favorites, besides my own wines. But my favorite from my vintage is the Expression series we do, and that's a blend of Shiraz and Cab. So that's sort of my flagship wines.
Got two more here for you, and we'll let you get back to the practicing down in Puerto Rico. But I also know you do golf course design and architecture as one of your other jobs as well. And my question of that is, do you have general principles that you like to bring into a project, or do you sort of, between what the client wants and what the land will let you do, sort of let that be as it is, in the sense that you don't want to disturb it, or if you can make it better by being more natural, there's not a template per se. So how do you sort of go about those projects that you're involved in? And is there any principles that you think are really important for really good architecture?
Well, I think most of us that like doing that, it's what kind of land you have. That has a lot to do with what design you come up with. But certain designers stick with a certain sort of style they like a Pete Dyer likes his style, a Jack Nicklaus likes his style. I've always leaned towards a little bit of a Jack Nicklaus style. I seem to like his golf courses. His golf courses are very, very playable for all levels of golf, and you can trick it up if you need to, or you can make it play reasonable for the average player. So I've always liked a Nicklaus designs, and my feel on that front is very similar to that.
Where you want to be able to have it challenging for the best player, but yet have enough width off the tee, or enough, not make it overly punishing for the 15 handicap, to try to find that balance between the both. And I imagine at times that's got to be difficult to bring all those elements into one golf course design as well, but that's the fun challenge of it, I'm assuming, as well.
Yes, no, that's true. It is a fine line between making it challenging for everyone, or just silly. Some golf courses these days we play can get a little silly with 50, 100-yard runoffs and all that kind of stuff, which is just not really fun for anybody to play. But you need to. It's a fine line to design modern golf courses with the clubs going this far, and the players, getting so much stronger and hitting the ball so much further. It's a fine line with just building golf courses that are 7,500 yards, but you need a golf course that can play 7,000 yards and be very tricky. The designers definitely have the challenge these days to do a big combination.
Last one I have for you. In your opinion, 2 or 3 best golf courses in the world you've played from an architectural standpoint, and they might not even be courses that are played on tour, of course, but is there any 2 or 3 that just stand out over the test of time where you as a player and as a designer say, man, this is just spectacular, and what makes them so great?
Well, obviously, everybody is going to come up with Augusta as one of their favorites. The design, the layout, the feel about the place. It's not that anybody can just go and play it, but Augusta will definitely be in my top 3, and then St Andrews is definitely one of my favorites. It's just the feel about the place, the history. When you walk on that course and you know this is where this game pretty much started, and you know, the road hole and the 18th hole, all that stuff just makes it so special. Those 2 are definitely there for me. I've always also been a fan of golf courses that's not overly long but quite tricky. If you think about Innisbrook in Tampa, where we played the Valspar, that's one of my favorite courses too. It's a golf course that requires all the shots to keep it on the fairway as well as getting it close to the flag. So I would say those are my 3.
Retief, I really, really appreciate your time today. Play well this week, and thanks again for being on the podcast. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be on.